Welcome to the Millionaire Journey Podcast. The goal of this podcast is to guide and empower you on your journey towards financial independence. Here's your host, Glenn Yaney.
Today, my guest is Jay Connor, the Private Money Authority. Welcome, Jay.
Glenn, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to come along and talk about my most favorite topic in real estate investing, that being private money, because private money's had more of an effect and impact on our real estate investing business than any other strategy we put to use.
It definitely has its appeal, and I've gone deep into research recently about it, so I'm excited to have you on. And really, I read your profile, and I'm excited to hear your story. So if you could tell us your story, that would be great.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, Glenn. First of all, I live here in Eastern North Carolina, in case you haven't picked up on that yet, in a really, really small town called Morehead City, North Carolina. And I started along with my wife. My wife, her name is Carol Joy. She's from Texas, and we've been married now for 39 years, living most of the time right here in Eastern North Carolina. Well, we started investing in single-family houses all the way back in 2003. And it was interesting. From 2003 until January of 2009, those first 6 years, Glenn, the only thing I knew to do to get funding for my real estate deals was go to the local bank, get on my hands and knees, say, please fund my deal, fill out applications. The banker made me pull up my skirt and show all my personal assets, have my credit score pulled. That's all I knew to do. That's all I knew to do was to borrow money traditionally from institutions. And that worked out okay, so to speak, okay, for those first 6 years. But then, Glenn, everything changed in January 2009. I was sitting here at this very desk. I had 2 houses under contract to purchase. I thought I still had a line of credit at the local bank. And so I picked up the phone. I called my banker. His name was Steve. I told him about my 2 deals that were under contract to purchase. And Glenn, I learned like that over the telephone that my line of credit had been closed and shut down with no notice to me whatsoever. And I said to Steve, Steve, what in the world are you talking about? We've had a business relationship for 6 years. I've always made my payments on time. You funded a ton of deals. And now you're telling me my line of credit is closed. What in the world is going on? He said, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, I don't know that, but you just gave me a global financial crisis.
Yeah.
I don't have a way to fund these 2 deals. He said, sorry, we're not loaning money out to real estate investors. So I put the handset down on the receiver and I sat here for a moment. And Glenn, I want to share with you and your audience a very powerful question that I asked myself. And you know, the power is in asking the right questions. That's where you get the right answers. So here's the question I asked myself. And by the way, this question will help fix any problem that anybody's got going on. And by the way, these people running around saying, oh, every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. Let's face the facts. Now, that problem did become an opportunity because you and I wouldn't be here visiting today on your show without that problem. But here's the question I asked myself that changed the total trajectory of my business. And the question I asked myself was this. I said, Jay, who do you know? Not how, but who. Who do you know that can help fix your problem of not having funding for your deals? And when I asked myself that question, I immediately thought of a good friend. His name is Jeff Blankenship. He lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. And I called up Jeff and I told Jeff what had just happened with me getting shut down at the local bank. Jeff said, well, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, what club is that that I don't want to be a member of? He said, well, that's the club of having the bank shut you down. He said, my bank shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to get funding for your real estate deals? He said, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He says, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs to where people that have retirement accounts can move them over to a self-directed IRA company and then loan that money out to us real estate investors, and the interest we pay them is tax-deferred or tax-free? I said, Jeff, I don't have a clue what in the world you're talking about. I said, well, it's private money. He said, well, there's this gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida, by the name of Ron LeGrand. And he says that he can teach us about private money. I said, well, what is it? He says, I don't know, but Ron says we can get a lot of it really, really fast. So I went to my very first real estate investing seminar that I'd ever attended in February of 2009 after doing this business for 6 years. And I went there to learn about private money. Well, boy, did I learn about private money. I came back home, and here's what's interesting, Glenn. I decided I did not want to run around and chase and beg and sell and persuade anybody into loaning me money. It seemed to me it would make sense to lead with a servant's heart and just simply put on my teacher hat, which says private money teacher, and just start exposing people in my own connections, in my own network, what private money is and how they can get high returns safely and securely on their investment capital and or their retirement funds. So you know what's interesting, Glenn, is to this day, I've never asked anybody for money. I've never pitched a deal. So how did I go about doing it? Well, the first thing I did was, as I just said, you got to own the real estate between your ears first. Get the right mindset. No chasing, no begging, no selling, no persuading. Be a servant and just start exposing people in your own network what this world is all about. Well, before I could be a teacher, I had to figure out what in the world am I going to teach? Well, so what I decided I would teach is my private lending opportunity. I would teach the program, the opportunity. So I decided what interest rate I'm going to pay people. I'm going to decide on frequency of payments. I'm going to decide on how they can get their money back in case of an emergency. I'm going to decide on the length of the note, et cetera, and put that into just an easy conversation and start sharing it. So that's what I did. I went about just sharing this opportunity with people in my own network. I put on a private lender luncheon, raised $969,000 right there at that luncheon. And a big part of the secret is of not having any deal attached to it when you're initially offering or teaching the opportunity. Here's a writer downer. Desperation has a smell to it. Desperation has a smell. The worst time to be raising private money is when you need it for a deal. Now, I'm going to take a little risk, Glenn. I'm going to take a little risk here. I'm going to ask you the question. Have you ever heard the guru on stage say, oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up.
Oh, yeah. That's what was told to me at the beginning.
That's the most stupid thing I ever heard in my life. They'll also say, oh, money finds good deals. I mean, has money got legs that's, walking around looking for good deals? I mean, so it just seemed to me, it made a whole lot more sense to get the money lined up first. And how much more confident and how many more offers am I going to make that I know I can close in 7 days and I know where the money's coming from. So I was able to raise $2,150,000 in new funding within that first 90 days that I started sharing the opportunity. And since that time, I've never missed out on a deal for not having the funding.
Yeah, I love that story. And I can relate with banks. And we try, for us, we really have tried not to use the banks that much because we are told no a lot. So it's like, especially if you're raising capital, like say equity capital, you don't want the banks to tell you no at the last minute because you've already rallied up the troops, got everything signed up. And then for some reason, like insurance or whatever the case be, it's the bank's ready to tell you no. But for us, the private lending, it's just like, well, it's not that the lender tells us no, it just changes the terms. It's better than absolute no. So we've had it to where we had to put up more escrow. We'll close on the deal with these contingencies to be fixed right away, stuff like that. And that's been my favorite part about private lending for sure.
Right. Well, I've got 20 reasons that I love private money. The biggest over-encompassing reason I love private money, and it took me a little bit to get my mind wrapped around this, but the overall encompassing reason I love private money is because we as the borrower, we are our own underwriter. Instead of asking or applying for a mortgage, we're offering an opportunity. We're offering a mortgage. So guess what? We as the borrower, this is so opposite direction from traditional thinking. Traditional thinking says, whoever's got the money to loan out makes the rules. That's traditional thinking. But in this world, as the borrower, we make the rules. We are our own underwriter. We set the interest rate that we're offering. We set the terms, the length of the note, all that. And it's so easy to be a teacher and expose people to this world that have never been exposed to this world. You see, all my 47 private lenders, they're ordinary people. They're not like fancy people walking around. These are ordinary people. I got retired school teachers. I've got retired law enforcement officers. I've even had minors, under 18 years old that inherited money from grandparents that passed away. I've got people that are civil servants that work at Cherry Point Naval Air Station. So just ordinary people that never have been exposed to this world of private money, how they can use retirement funds. And they never heard of self-directed IRAs until I introduced them to a self-directed IRA company to where they can move their funds over. And so one big part of being in control, setting your own terms, being in the driver's seat is that you don't have to pitch deals. I've never pitched a deal and people say, well, Jay, how in the world do you get a deal funded? How do you get a deal funded if you're not pitching a deal? Here's the secret sauce. Here's the answer to that question. separate the conversations between teaching the opportunity and having a deal to fund. If you have an initial conversation with a potential private lender in your own network about your program and the opportunity that you have to offer, and then having a deal to fund in that same conversation, you're already sounding desperate without even trying to sound desperate, right? And so I first teach the opportunity. I don't have to ask them if they're interested. I mean, if they're listening, they're interested. And they're automatically going to tell me what they got to work with. If it's just investment capital they got sitting in a checking account or a CD at the bank, they tell me how much they got. And I tell them I'll put their money to work for them as soon as possible. If they've got retirement funds, I'll introduce them to the self-directed IRA company and get their funds moved over. But I have a script, Glenn. I have a script that I want to share with you and your audience as to exactly what to say to a private lender over the phone. This is exactly what I do. I've done it for years. Exactly what to say to a private lender over the phone when you're ready for a deal to be funded, and they always fund it without you asking. So the best way I can teach this is to do a little role play with you, and let me set it up. So
I'm a tough customer. So
okay, all right. So
all right.
so let's make three assumptions. First of all, let's assume you and I go to church together. And let's say, you and I have known each other for, quite a while. We know each
10
other.
years.
10 years. We've been seeing each other 3 times a week at church.
Yeah. All right. Got it.
That's the first assumption. Second assumption, let's hypothetically assume that I have exposed you. I've taught you about private money and private lending. We went to Starbucks, we had coffee, we had a conversation. And I had asked you maybe somewhere along the way, I've said, Glenn, by the way, did you know that there's a way people can make unlimited money per year tax deferred? And so we had a conversation about self-directed IRAs. Well, come to find out in that conversation, I learned in our hypothetical situation, that you have a $150,000 401k at a previous employer that's still over there. It's in the stock market, and you're sick and tired of the volatility, and you want to get reliable returns. You love the 8%. That's a whole lot better than you get in the local bank. And so I've introduced you to the self-directed IRA company I recommend. And let's assume that you have moved that $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company, and now you are waiting for the good news phone call. So
yes, I'm ready.
So that's the setup. So I dial you up. You answer the phone. We have a little chit chat, etc. And so here's exactly what I would say to Glenn, my new private lender in this case. I'd say, Glenn, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house under contract in Newport, North Carolina with an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for the deal matches up to what you have in your retirement account. It's $150,000 is what's required for the deal. Now, fund or closing is scheduled for next Tuesday. So I'll need for you to have your $150,000 wired to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Monday. I'm going to have my attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I could do is ask Glenn, do you want to fund the deal? Of course, Glenn wants to fund the deal. There are 3 big reasons in that little story, in that little scenario. There's 3 big reasons that Glenn wants to fund my deal and wire that $150,000 just as fast as he can. The first reason Glenn wants to fund my deal is, for goodness sakes, he trusted me to move his $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company. He's moved it over at my recommendation, never heard of him until I introduced him. So he trusted me to move that money. The second reason Glenn is wanting to fund my deal is he knows I'm not going to bring a deal to him to fund unless it matches the lending criteria that I already taught him. So did you hear the dollars in the story? I told Glenn it's got an after repaired value of $200,000 and the funding for the deal is $150,000. He already knows that I'm not going to borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. I didn't say 75% of the purchase price. I'm going to have a big check from this closing called excess cash to close. And Glenn knows I'm not going to borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. That matches up to what I told him. And the third reason Glenn is ecstatic to fund my deal is because he's not making any money until I put his money to work. So I'm ethically bound to call up Glenn with the good news phone call.
Hey guys, if you want to learn more about our deals we're investing in, go to our website and sign up for our free ebook, 10 Reasons Mobile Home Parks Outperform Other Real Estate Investments. We won't spam you. We'll just keep you updated on the podcast and the deals we're working on. Now, back to the show. Literally, as you were talking, I was thinking about all those things, and you answered them as you were talking. I was like, "I'm going to be a tough customer," and then you're like, you answered all of them. And I love the first lien lending aspect of it. It gives people security and so does when you offer it, is it that they are first lien, or how does that work?
They could be first, second, or third, depending who they are and how much money they got to work with. Excuse me. So I use larger amounts of money in first position for purchases
Yeah,
or for purchase and rehab. So, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, whatever. Our median price right now, our homes in our area is hanging around $350,000. So we use the larger amounts in first position and I pay 8%. And then I've got some private lenders that maybe only have 50,000, right? And that's my minimum. By the way, you need to determine as you're putting your
yeah,
program together, what's the
yeah.
minimum that you'll accept? Because that's going to be one of the first questions they ask is what's your minimum amount? So you need to have that answer ready. Well, my
Bump
minimum
it
is
up.
50,000.
You gotta be high. If you say 25, they're gonna give you 25.
Oh, exactly. It's like, well, and even when I tell them my minimum is 50 and they say, well, I'd like to start with 50, I say, that's great. But I'll just have you know, I'm not going to be able to buy a house for 50,000. I'll only
Yeah,
be able to use your money for renovations. And I can put larger amounts of money to work quicker than I can smaller amounts. But I'll start with whatever you want to.
yeah,
So, but I pay 10% in second position. Truth be told, they'd be happy at 8%. But I
yeah,
know, they don't know, but I know second position is at more risk than first position, even though they're getting their own deed of trust or mortgage and promissory note, the same protection. If a junior lien has to foreclose, which God forbid, don't make your
yeah.
private lender foreclose, give them a deed in lieu of foreclosure if that happened. But
Exactly.
anyway, for a junior lien position to be made whole, then they have to inherit and acquire any senior positions.
So, with those loans, what do you actually do to pivot out of them, or do you keep them, or do you roll into conventional financing afterwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't roll into conventional financing because I'm not a buy and hold person. I've sold a lot of homes on lease purchase or rent to own over
Uh-huh.
the years, but at 8% in today's market, you can have a positive cash flow. In
Yeah,
fact, the local bank right here down the street from my office is charging more than 8%
yeah,
today on commercial notes. So how do I roll out of them? Well, it depends. And here's what it depends on. When I renovate a house and get it in beautiful, perfect condition, and I put it on the market and I have a buyer, of course, for that buyer, that traditional buyer, they got to have a clear title. So I've either got to pay off my private lender from that sale, or I can do a substitution of collateral. So let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, by the way, private lenders don't want their money back. They do not want it back. If they get it back, they're not making any money. And what are they
yeah,
going to do with it? Right. They want to keep that money invested. Right. And so, in fact, when I have a new private lender and I'm cashing out and paying them off, one of the first questions they'll ask me is, like, can't you just keep the money, Jay? Can't you just keep the money? And the answer is yes, I can keep the money if I can still keep your note collateralized. So if I don't pay it off, if I have another property that I'm purchasing within 7 calendar days, or I have another property that has enough equity in it, depending on how much the private lender is loaned, then I'll have my attorney draw up a loan modification, which is a substitution of collateral, and the private lender will have to sign off on that. And so we'll keep their note open and in play. They won't lose any interest that they're earning, but we're just changing the property that's
yep.
backing that note.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on this because I was really thinking hard about getting into private lending. Uh, what I have found is, this is probably a limiting belief, but it felt like there was a lot of people in the space. I would say it's increased recently, and I was looking to charge a lot higher interest too. I think I was going to be in the 12% range, 2% on the front and then 2 on the back.
Well,
And then
we don't lend the same way we borrow, do we?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So
so,
that's yeah,
so one question I get often is, well, where do you find these private lenders? Like, where are these people, right? Where are private lenders? Well, there's three categories of private lenders. There's people in your own network. Now, this is from your perspective to borrow. You're going to be a borrower, your own
yeah,
network. And then there's what I call your expanded network. So if you want to scale your business, you're going to have to expand your network, right? Because you're going to run out of your
yep,
own connections sooner or later, depending on how you want to scale. Well, I teach how to expand your network and blow that up very, very quickly. Becoming involved in Business Networking International is a very, very quick way to do that. And then the third category of where you find private lenders are existing private lenders. Now, the reason I thought to share this is because of what you just said, Glenn. So an existing private lender is an individual, a human being, just like us, that's loaning money out from their investment capital and or their retirement funds, or maybe they're leveraging some assets, right? So here's what's different. So Glenn, let's say that I'm a real estate investor as I am, and let's say you're a private lender, and let's say you've already done private lender loans. If you're already a private lender, I'm not going to put on my teacher hat and teach you about private money and private lending. You already know it. You've
Yeah.
already done it. I'm not going to teach you what I pay. I'm not going to, what I'm going to do is so now it's a negotiation conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to ask you, well, what are you accustomed to getting? And how do you like to be protected? And what kind of real estate investors do you work with? It's a whole different conversation with someone that already knows about private money and private lending than someone that's brand new. See, someone that's brand new that's never heard of this world, you get to be their mentor and their teacher and their advisor, right? Which is a totally different conversation than talking with an existing private lender.
Yeah, definitely. So with your personal business, how do you how many houses you mainly flip and you don't buy and hold?
Well, it depends on how I buy them. It depends on how I
Okay.
buy them. If I buy them on terms, I'll sell them on terms. So if I buy a house subject to the existing note creatively, then it makes sense, particularly over 90% of mortgages out there are around 3% to 4%, right? That's cheap money. When I buy subject
Yeah.
to the existing note, I'm inheriting that low mortgage rent. So it makes sense to sell them on rent to own. When I'm using all private money to purchase a property and renovate it, then I'm either going to sell it because I don't want to leave private money buried in there, right? And cash out the private lenders. Or I could refinance if it was a buy and hold. I could refinance with institutional money, pay off the private lender, and then go use that private money over again and over again on other projects or other houses.
Yeah, because my thing is, I do mobile home parks, but at the same time, I really think now is the time to be buying single family homes, just because the individual retail buyer isn't really buying houses right now. So the prices have come down to give you a chance to actually enter into the single family market to make somewhat sense. And I've been getting, putting some feelers out, trying to find a deal. But really, uh, it would start with private money and then roll it through the conventional afterwards.
Sure, that's
More,
definitely one exit strategy. Yeah, if the numbers work in the market where you're investing in,
yeah,
then it's been around forever, called the Burr method.
Burr method. Yeah, cool. So, what would you say? What's up next for Jay? Like, what would you say your 1 year to 5 year plan is?
What's next for Jay is I have now become of the age and been in this business long enough. What's the most important to me, Glenn, is making an impact, giving back, and being significant to some other real estate investors and exposing other real estate investors to what this world is all about. I've been coaching other real estate investors ever since 2011, but in this niche of private money. But now that's really become my passion. And so one way that I love to do that, with your permission, is I'd love to give your audience a copy of my book that is titled Where to Get the Money Now. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's called Where to Get the Money Now. This is not an ebook. This is an actual book. And believe
Even
it or not,
better.
huh?
I said even better.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the United States Postal Service, believe it or not, is still open and in business. So I would love to autograph this book and mail it to you, priority mail. You can pick it up for $20 on Amazon, but don't spend your money on Amazon. The name of the book is Where to Get the Money Now. Subtitle: How and Where to Get All the Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Institutional or Hard Money Lenders. So in this world of private money, we're not talking about hard money, institutional money. We're talking about doing business with ordinary individual people. I'm also going to include 2 tickets valued at $3,000 to my 3-day live event, which is called the Private Money Conference, that I put on 3 times a year. And so you can pick up the book, just cover shipping and handling. You can pick up the book at www.jayconner.com/book. So I'm an ER, not an OR. So JAYCONNER.com/book. I'll rush it right out to you. And in addition to that, I'm now in my 8th year of my own podcast and show, which is called Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. Imagine that. So it's on all the platforms for podcasting. If you've enjoyed the content of this show, twice a week, I interview other people as to how they have gone about raising private money. And we learn a lot every week from each other as to how other people have gone about raising private money for their real estate deals. So come over and join the party at Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing that really attracts me to doing private lending and is the guys that I have ran into that are private lenders, like real private lenders, lending their own money, have pretty well balanced lives, and they also have like there's a good calmness to them generally. It's like they're not as all over the place. And the one private lender that's a mentor to me, he tells us that we write him a check for $40,000 a month, and he donates 100% of it to he tells us where he sends it. He'll like send us like articles and stuff like, "Hey, this is where your money went," and it's pretty inspirational, is what I would say. It's like somebody like he's doing it. He really believes he's helping. Well, he is. He's 100% helping us. He believes he's helping us, which in return, our interest that we're paying him is helping somebody else, and that's how he's doing it. It's pretty inspiring, and it's always been intriguing to learn about the private money world. So
yeah, that's very inspiring, and that's what it's all about, giving back for sure.
Yeah, so I appreciate you so much, Jay, for coming on, and we'll have all your information in the show notes. Thank you for being on.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Millionaire Journey podcast. Please rate, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with somebody you think would enjoy listening.